they can all be easy or difficult depending on where you're at and what you're doing. So that's a trick question. Trick question, I'm gonna call it out. Let's just call it that, offshore fishing. You gotta spend a lot of time figuring that stuff out. Like Randy Haynes Jr., I tried to be last year, did not cut it. Gotta go back to the bank hunter.
There's no doubt in my mind the hardest is the swim bait. That series of baits there's a lot of understanding to a swim bait and a lot of different things to be taken into account of when to use what size and how big a one and all different kinds of things. So it confuses me.
For me, it's like probably skipping jigs way up under docks. I mean, you watch some of these Brian Thrift or Jimmy Houston even cast a jig or a spinnerbait and put it in a hole this big perfectly every time. I can't do that. I can, if I get fishing docks all day, I can like make some good casts and get a few good ones in there, but there's gonna be some pinging going on too.
In a way, I want to say jerk baiting because and I've been with people that throw it good, just like Kelly J at St. John's River. I'm fishing in there with a jerk bait too, and I didn't get a bite, and he's got 20 pounds. So he's really good at it, and I thought I was good at it until I saw that, so probably jerk baiting.
Crankbait fishing is difficult. I know a lot of times you're just casting it and reeling it in, but really dialing in your equipment to get it perfect where you don't lose fish, there's a lot more to cranking than most people give it credit for.
Probably the hardest thing to me, in which I'm I'm laid back, but I'm high strung, if that makes sense, is like a wacky rig. I know it's the simplest thing in the world. Throw it out there, let it go to the bottom, pick it up, let it go to the bottom, but it takes 4 hours for it to go to the bottom, it seems like to me, and I just can't do it, but it's a technique that works, and I've got to get better at it and get a little more patience, but it's something you got to have in your arsenal to use, because it catches them everywhere.
Probably jerk bait over grass. There's a few guys that are really good at that. It's something that I've started to enjoy doing, but it definitely is an art to it, and a feel. You have to be able to feel that bait hit the grass and when to snatch it out of the grass and stuff. So jerking and trapping both are both hard to do.
I would say probably one of the hardest techniques to master is like a topwater walking bait or something where you have to create the action in the bait, right? Like to master a spinner bait, a crankbait, things like that is not as difficult because a lot of it's just cast one, you create a little bit of action, but something where you have to make that bait move side to side, a jerk bait, something where you have to have that right rhythm in your wrist and in that rod. Those are the techniques that are probably the most difficult to master just because it takes the most dexterity and stuff in your action or creating it into that bait.
For me, it's been the glide baits, but 100% from lack of confidence and just not really giving them enough try.
I would have to say it's probably a jerk bait because you never know what the cadence is that you're looking for.
I'm going to say it's not even hard to rig and it's not even a hard technique because a lot of people think you just throw it and reel it, but the lipless crankbait, it's a very tricky rig because a lot of times those fish don't want it, just throw it out there, retrieve it back to the boat, and you've got to be able to fish it around the cover that you're on. If you grow up in Texas around those grass lakes or like here in Alabama around Gunnersville, places like that, you get good at it, but for me it's tough to learn that technique.
A crankbait is a kind of a difficult one. Yeah, you can throw it out and reel it in, but there's so many little adjustments and techniques and different ways to fish it. So that's kind of a tough one to master, to really get it dialed in. You can throw it on rock, you can throw it in the grass, you can get it to run different ways by tweaking it. So that's probably a difficult one.
To me, it's going to be that deep cranking. Anything in that 15 to 20 foot depth range. Like I said, man, when I throw that plug out there, I don't even feel like I'm going to hit the water. My biggest problem is I can't tell what that plug's doing. It's not like square bill fishing where I can tell what it's doing. When I got that big plug on there, I'm just clueless.
I'd have to say it'd be, stuff that's really deep. Anything that's over 30, 40 foot. I just don't do that at home because there's no water down there that lets me practice that style. So anything that's, say spots that are in 50 foot, I just don't fathom that. That's just not in my reach. I don't have enough line on my reels to reach those. So, I'd have to really get with somebody and they'd have to show me how to do that kind of stuff.
something super simple, probably the Senko, because I can't slow down enough to fish the stupid thing. I want to throw it out there and work it, and you can't work it to make it work. So that's the hardest thing for me to do, is slow down.
Believe it or not, it's probably going to be plastics, because people that are just getting into fishing or bass fishing tend to overwork the bait. They're trying to hop it, pop it, and get a lot of action out of it. But basically, when you're fishing plastics like shaky head or worm and so on and so forth, you want to keep contact with the bottom. You want to move the bait really slow, give the bass a chance to follow it along and then react on it. So believe it or not, it's plastic.